My dear children, today we are going to study the First World War. In 1914, a war began in Europe which soon engulfed almost the entire world, with the battles being fought in Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. This war was different from the wars fought earlier in terms of its scale and its repercussions. It was fought on a worldwide scale and affected almost all the countries of the world. During this war, new methods of defense and destruction were used. Moreover, in the earlier wars, the civilian populations were not generally involved, but this war was fought by the people as a whole. Thus, the war marked the turning point in the history of the world. Because of the unprecedented extent of its spread, impact, and damage, and its total nature, it is known as the First World War. Now, students, we will study the causes for the First World War. The causes are as follows. Bismarck's diplomacy. After the Franco-Prussian War of 1870-71, the German Chancellor Bismarck used diplomatic policies to keep France isolated. Under him, Germany formed a dual alliance with Austria in 1879. Italy joined it later in 1882. It was converted into Triple Alliance. Division of Europe into two hostile groups. There were two kinds of states in Europe in the early 20th century. On the one hand, there were single nation states like France, Holland, Germany, whose national identities were based on their common language and traditions. On the other, there were imperial states like Austria-Hungary Empire or the Russian Empire. The Austrian-Hungary Empire was ruled by the Habsburg dynasty of Austria and included in its territory Hungarian, Serb, Bosnian, and Croat population who spoke different languages and had different cultural traditions. The Russian Empire included territories populated by Polish, Ukrainian, Turkish, and Mongol population. Only after Bismarck's death, France was able to establish friendly relations with Russia and England. The three countries entered into the Triple Entente in 1907 to counter the Triple Alliance. Imperialistic rivalries. Germany was not able to grab many colonies, having arrived late on the scene. Most of Asia and Africa had already been occupied by older imperialist powers like England and France. German imperialists therefore dreamed of expanding in the east. They had planned the construction of a railway line from Berlin to Baghdad to control the economy of the declining Ottoman Empire. This plan created a fear in Britain, France, and Russia, as the completion of the Berlin-Baghdad railway would endanger their imperialist ambitions in the Ottoman Empire. The Germans had imperialist ambitions elsewhere also, including Africa. Race for armaments. There was an armament race, and the peculiar feature of such a race was that if one country increased its armaments, other countries were compelled to do the same. In order to protect her colonies in Africa and a few islands in the Pacific, Germany began to build a powerful navy with a view to achieving parity with Britain. The Germans dug the Kiel Canal deeper so that battleships could enter its water Britain and France were concerned with Germany's growing military strength. No effective machinery for the preservation of peace. There was no such effective machinery which could maintain peace. There was total anarchy in the international sphere due to lack of an effective machinery to enforce the law among nations. Narrow nationalism. This was an era of narrow nationalism. The love of one's own country demanded the hatred of the other. Nationalism led to the creation of two new powers, Italy and Germany, through the uniting of many small states. Negative role of the press. Newspapers and media poisoned public opinion by presenting views in such a manner so as to increase their sale. Their hostile propaganda created an atmosphere of doubt, distrust, and tension, which proved harmful to world peace. System of secret alliances. The whole of Europe was divided into two armed camps, the Triple Alliance and Triple Entente, bound by various secret alliances. This secret diplomacy gave rise to the feelings of mutual suspicion, distrust, and hatred. Balkan Crisis. In 1908, Austria annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina. These provinces were coveted by Serbia, who had the support of Russians to establish a united Slav state at the Balkans. In 1912, four Balkan countries, Serbia, Bulgaria, Montenegro, and Greece, started a war against the Turks. As a result of the war, Turkey lost her possessions in Europe. Balkan countries fought another war to decide the distribution of former Turkish territory among themselves. Germany's desire to be world power. Germany's desire to be reckoned as a world power added to the growing unrest. As long as Bismarck was at the helm of affairs, Germany was contented in maintaining the status quo based upon the supremacy in Europe. However, after the fall of Bismarck in 1890, Germany's ambitions began to soar high and she set her eyes on world domination. The immediate cause of the war was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Francis Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, was assassinated at Sarajevo, capital of Bosnia. The assassination was organized by a secret society called Black Hand, Serbian nationalist whose aim was to unite all Serbians into a single Serbian state. Austria served an ultimatum on Serbia on 23rd July, making 11 demands. Events of World War I. On July 28, 1914, Austria declared war on Serbia because Serbia was not ready to fulfill the demands of Austria made by that 11 demands. So, on August 1, 1914, Germany declared war on Russia, and on August 3, on France. German troops marched into Belgium to press on to France on August 4, and on the same day, Britain declared war on Germany. Many other countries soon entered the war. Japan declared war on Germany in captured German colonies in the Far East. Turkey and Bulgaria joined on the side of Germany. Italy remained neutral for some time but joined the war against Germany in 1915, breaking the Triple Alliance. Britain, France, Russia and their allies were called Allied powers, while Germany, Austria and their allies were called Central powers. The war was fought in many different areas called fronts. There was Western Front between Germany and Northern France, and on Eastern Front between Germany and Russian forces. There was fighting at sea in the Middle East, where the Allied powers attacked the Ottoman Empire. The Allies were saved by the entry of USA into the war in 1917. One more important event took place in this year 1917. That is the Bolshevik Revolution or the Russian Revolution. The exit of Russia was very important in this course of war. There was internal disturbance in Russia. So there was a war in Russia against the Tsar, autocratic Tsar. So Russian Revolution marked the exit of Russia from the war. Entry of USA also is very important event in the course of First World War. Now, after the war was over, there were some peace treaties which were signed between the victorious nations and the nations which were defeated. The victorious powers of the Allies met a conference first in Versailles, a suburb of Paris, and later in Paris between January and June 1919. Though the number of countries represented at the conference was 27, the terms of the peace treaties were really decided by Woodrow Wilson, President of the United States, Lloyd George, Prime Minister of Britain, and George Clemenceau, Prime Minister of France. The defeated countries were not represented at the conference. The victorious powers also excluded Russia from this conference. The Treaty of Versailles, as a result which was signed, the basis of the treaty negotiation on the American President Woodrow Wilson, 14 points were made. The treaty was designed to prevent Germany from going to war again. Terms of this Treaty of Versailles were very, very harsh. Germany was required to pay for the loss and damages suffered by the Allies during the war. The amount of reparations was fixed at $33 billion. So very harsh terms were imposed on Germany. Let us now discuss some of the consequences of this World War I. It changed the political map of the world. The war and the peace treaties transformed the political map, particularly of Europe. 3 ruling dynasties were destroyed. These were the Romanov in Russia during the war itself, then the Hohenzollern in Germany, and Habsburg to Austria-Hungary. Soon after the war, the rule of Ottoman came to an end in Turkey. This gave impetus to nationalism. The war gave a great impetus to the principles of nationalism and self-determination. Empires having different cultures were dissolved and independent states having distinct cultures emerged after the war. End of European supremacy. The period after the war was the beginning of the end of European supremacy in the world. Economically and militarily, the United States surpassed Europe to emerge as a world peace. Strengthening of freedom movements. The period after war saw the strengthening of the freedom movements in Asia as well as in Africa. This also gave rise to one organization which was responsible for maintaining peace in the world. That was League of Nations. The League of Nations was founded in 1920 for the maintenance of world peace. However, the League of Nations failed to establish peace in the world. So this body was complete failure. As a result, we will study in the next chapter after World War II that United Nations was formed, replaced by League of Nations. That was all about First World War, children. In my next video, we will discuss about rise of dictatorship. Thank you.